Thank you for your company on another episode of Always Be Connecting. This is going to be a fabulous 30 minutes for anyone who is looking at doing public speaking and has some obstacles that they need to address of their fears and how they're going to do it. Is it going to be interesting? Is anyone going to care? Is anyone going to turn up? These are all shared fears, and I say that from my own experiences of public speaking also. And we've got a great guest to help us navigate this. Trang Nova is a TEDx speaker, and she is a personal development coach who helps people find their voice and overcome their fears to become great public speakers. So thank you so much for joining us, Trang.
Lindsay, thank you for having me here today. I am delighted to have this conversation ahead of us.
So I just want to set up my first question, because last night I was watching a masterclass with Margaret Atwood, who is the author of The Handmaid's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
And it was on storytelling. And she was saying that her children, I think it was, came to her when they were 5 with a story. And it was, I have a cup of tea, and then I sliced the cake, and then I gave the cake. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying this cake. And Margaret Atwood said, well, I'll come back when something interesting happens. And then when I rewatched your TEDx talk, I was really, it reminded me of that, because when you're public speaking, audiences are looking for the obstacles, for the things that you've overcome, the suspense, the delight, the feelings that people bring. So it's so interesting to me that your TEDx talk was talking about the obstacles that you faced yourself in pursuing your career. Do you want to start off with talking a little bit about the obstacles that you've overcome and how you got into the personal development space?
To take it right back from the start, I was born here in Melbourne, Australia, to Vietnamese immigrants' parents. So I grew up speaking Vietnamese, not English. And because of that, in school, I was that weird kid sitting in the corner on my own, surrounded by other kids playing in what seemed like an alien language. And because of that, I became very shy. I became very withdrawn, and I got bullied for that. And that carried throughout my primary school years, that carried into my high school years, when I still carried the narrative that I don't belong. Like, I'm awkward, people don't like me. And when I tell this story, people are surprised, because when they look at me now, they always say, Trang, you're so confident. You're such a natural, extroverted speaker. But it hasn't always been like that. How did I go through this journey to get to where I am now? And what I say to that is, it's simply down to this one secret that I have. And this secret is, I've simply spent more hours working on my speaking than most people would reasonably expect.
Okay.
I'm talking about spending hundreds of hours in front of the mirror, investing in speaking training, watching back over videos of me, cringing through my own speaking videos.
That's hard.
To work on the 1%ers, right? So that is my secret that allows me to share with you that, like, speaking isn't something that we are born with. It's something that is a skill that anyone can learn, practice, and master.
So it's interesting that you changed the perception of yourself, because other people already had the perception that you were confident and skilled and able to do these things, and the only person left to convince was yourself. Really. What are those fears? Are there common fears that people have in public speaking?
Public speaking is one of the biggest fears in the world. So according to surveys, a lot of people report that they fear public speaking even more than the fear of death. which is wild because
Sure, I can
technically
relate. Yep, yep.
at a funeral, people would rather be in the coffin than doing the eulogy. The and this makes sense because when we are standing in front of a group of people and we are speaking to them, what happens in our brain is that our amygdala gets activated.
Okay.
That is part of the brain that is the emotional processing center. So that is what brings up the fear. Now, the reason why we feel this fear when we're speaking in front of other people versus when we are chatting with our friend, when we're at home on the phone, the reason for that is because the fear of judgment.
Yes.
In front of others, we're exposed and we have the risk of being judged, of being rejected, of failing, of looking like a fool. So that is the root of why people struggle with public speaking so much, even if they are confident in a one-on-one setting or they are otherwise quite fluent in the way that they communicate. So for me, with my background of being the odd one out in school, of being the one who was bullied for having stinky food in the school classroom and for not knowing how to speak English. And then when I started to learn English and I had accents, people made fun of me for that. That has been such a root of my fears for a long time. And it's not just me. I think we can all relate to this. Even if we didn't necessarily get bullied, we all as humans have that innate survival instinct to want to belong.
Yeah.
No one wants to be the odd one out, right? Like no one wants to be rejected. So for me, that was a big fear for such a long time. And it's taken a lot of time to continually work on my self-image, how I see myself in relation to others, and accepting that, hey, for everyone that judges me, there's going to be another 10 people who are going to be inspired by what I need to say.
Yeah.
There's going to be another 10 people who are waiting and needing to hear my story and my message. And reminding myself of these mindset shifts has allowed me to come out of my shell in such a contrasting way from when I was still in school.
And the paradox is that if you ignore those fears and you do public speaking in that kind of marketing sense of like, oh, things are great and I'm successful and I'm happy with my life, it doesn't make for a great speech for people to hear.
You're right.
Whereas to hear someone talk about overcoming fears, whether it is in the public speaking or a different story, then that's the inspiring part. So
Yes.
whatever the fear is the thing that is the most interesting part about you.
You are right. That's such a good point because I was having lunch with the principal of a school the other day, and we were having chat about what she was doing differently in her primary school. And she told me that she was implementing this program for kids as young as 6 to start doing public speaking.
Okay.
And this is different because like usually in school, if we think about it, when we were growing up, it wasn't until the later years that we'd ever need to do a presentation in front of the classroom. But the reasoning for this was because at that younger age, there is so much less inhibitions to being avoiding the fear of judgment and being scared of being rejected. Because at that younger age, we see the world in a different way as adults and we are a lot more expressive. We're a lot more ourselves before we start getting told, hey, you should be like this, not that.
Yeah.
So the reason why she was implementing this from such a young age was she wanted, knowing that public speaking is such a big challenge in society, and yet it is something that we all need to do sooner or later, especially in our careers and in our business. She said, if we started from that young age of 6, 7 years old, then we'll be able to develop that skill before the fears set in. And I thought that was fantastic. I was like, that is such a great initiative. And if only more schools were implementing that.
Yeah.
Because I am now working with business owners, I'm working with executives who love what they do and they are passionate. But when it's time to stand in front of a group of people, when it's time to present, they find that their words get mumbled and they ramble or they freeze or they hesitate, and it's frustrating for them. And they're like, What's wrong with me?" And I say, there's nothing wrong with you. It's the way that the brain is wired, and it's natural that this is what you're experiencing. However, if we started earlier, as this principal was talking about, how much that would open up our expressiveness and our ability to speak up and use our voice in our work.
Sure. And it's quite unnatural, as you to have a point in your life where, okay, now you have the experience or the intrigue to now do public speaking. It's like, well, I've never done that before. Like,
Right?
like
We do
now
it,
I
but
have
we
to
aren't
talk.
taught how to.
So what are people missing? What if people are in a position where they've been told they have to have a more public persona, or they've started a business and they realize that they need a founder story, they need to sort of support this with a reason for people to support them.
Mm.
Like, what are some steps people can take to get to that point?
I love talking about these things. I love digging into the practicalities of the technical components of speaking. So firstly, the very, very first step is what we've already talked about, is looking within and addressing the root cause, which is the fear. Now, once you address that, the next step, and there are many things that I could talk about here, but what I want to start with is this. A lot of people believe that the way that they show up is a reflection of how they are feeling. So if they are feeling intimidated in a big high stakes meeting or in a sales pitch, then they expect that they can't help it, but for their body to respond to that intimidation or that nervousness. Maybe their shoulders shrink. Maybe they hang their head down. Maybe they're talking more softly because they're feeling nervous.
Sure.
But research has shown that it can actually happen the other way around as well. So our body language isn't just a reflection of how we feel. Our body language can influence how we feel. And this is one of the most immediate ways that we can alter our state. So if we do have a high stakes meeting, if we do have a sales pitch, if we've got something that we want to present on stage, we can make ourselves feel more confident in just 2 minutes. And the way that we can do that is by stepping into the body language of someone who is confident. And
Like
that will make us feel more confident straight away.
like Beyonce has Sasha Fierce.
Yes, that's her alter ego, right? So that is an identity-based shift. Like that's how she sees herself. In terms of our body, what we could do is we can take on the power pose. So some people may have heard
I
of this,
love
where
this.
you stand up tall. Yep,
Yeah,
we're
we can do a
doing this.
demonstration.
So standing up, feet apart, hip
Okay.
width or a little bit wider. You're going to bring your arms down by your body with your palms slightly apart. Your shoulders are going to be down away from your ears. Your chin is going to be up, and you're going to look up and make direct eye contact. So I know we're sitting now, so it's
Yeah.
a little bit harder to do. But when
Yeah.
we do that in a standing up position, research has shown that within just 2 minutes, our testosterone is raised by 20%, and then our cortisol reduced by 20%.
Yeah.
Meaning we feel less stressed, we feel less anxious, and we feel more confident and able to take greater risks. So straight away,
Yeah.
we can make ourselves feel more confident just through a few inches of body changes, of shifting our body language. And that's commonly talked about when it comes to smiling. Have you heard how if you want to feel happier, just smile? And even if it's a fake smile, it'll actually still increase oxytocin in your body, which will make you feel more happy. So we can alter the way that we feel before public speaking just by the way that we stand and hold our body.
Okay, so this is all sort of again talking about the perception of yourself. Your fears are your strength, and
Mhm.
so don't shrink away from the fears. Stand up tall with them, and then also the perception of yourself. I'm meek. My opinion is invalid. I'm not sure how to talk in this conversation. No, I'm in. Like that's really interesting. Like that those two things can reframe the perception of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And there is research to back the alter ego as well. So, what you were saying, Beyonce taking on Sasha Fierce, right? So, they've actually done an experiment where they've asked two groups, one of them to think of Bill Gates and to
Yeah.
step into his shoes, to talk like him. And when they did that, when they channeled Bill Gates, they immediately started talking differently, like their intonations changed, their body language changed, and they spoke with more confidence.
I love this.
So-
We're like channel Bill Gates. He's
Yes.
coming into me now.
Whoever you want to channel, who you admire or you aspire to communicate like, channel them and you will start to embody the way that they speak, their mannerisms, their traits,
Okay.
their cues. Because it, as you said, it's about taking on a different mindset so that we're not boxing ourselves into who we've always been in the past. We
Yeah.
allow ourselves to experiment and to play with different versions of ourselves through the inspiration of other role models who we may not have experimented with before.
Who are your role models and what things have you picked up from them that you like to embody?
I've got a few. So the first one is actually my very first speaking coach, quite a few years back now, and he's quite well known in the communication and speaking training field. His name is Vin Jiang. And a lot of people may have heard of him. He's blown up on social media.
Ah,
in
yeah, I've
recent
seen him
years.
on TikTok. Yep. I know who you're talking
Yes.
about. Yep.
So he was one of my very first speaking teachers. And
Oh,
a lot
wow.
of people now say that I do sound like him and I come across like him purely because I have consumed so much of his content, and the way that he speaks comes across so clear and articulate and very structured. And yet he speaks in a way that is very expressive, right? There's a lot of melodic variation. There's a lot of facial expressions. There's a lot of changes in tone that expresses the message in an engaging way.
And he's
So
got a lot
I-
of great messages like that, hasn't he? That's his messages in his talks, his intonation and how people perceive you through different techniques.
Correct. Because there are something that I teach now is there are 6 vocal foundations. So the way that we use our voice makes up to 93% of our message. So you know when you're at home and your partner's not happy with you and they're like, "I'm fine."
Yes.
They've said that they are fine, but you know that they are not fine because of the way that they said those words. And this is where the way that we communicate, like the way that we use our voice, can often mean more than the words that we use. So, going back to what we were talking about, the 6 vocal foundations, which is the way that we use our voice, even shifting those elements can already transform the way that we communicate. So I first learned that from Vin. That's something that I teach now. It's something that I really focus on and something that I spent all those hours in front of the mirror practicing when I was getting started on my journey. So that's something that I really admired because I'm quite an expressive person, right? Like I don't talk like this. I'm not like monotonous like this in my days. I'm very expressive, and that is something that I didn't see a lot of on stages. I saw a lot of corporate trainers, a lot of corporate speakers who
Whoa.
are very polished and very like professional, but I was looking for a role model who had more of that personality on stage.
Yeah, okay.
And Vin Jiang was a great role model for that.
Well, that's interesting because sometimes you see how it is and you think, well, is that for a reason? Is my way wrong because no one else is doing that like that? So maybe that's because, evolution has brought us this far and they've been doing it like that. So why? Like, how do you have the bravery to be a bit different, but also still have the business sense of maybe there's a reason people don't do it like this?
It links back to what I got to experience, where I saw many people doing things one way. So speakers and facilitators, I saw them doing it one way. So then I went and sought out other role models who showed that it was possible to do things another way.
Sure. And that could be in a different industry, a different field. You know, we talk about Beyonce or
Mm,
Taylor Swift. She uses the term pulling focus with her how she moves her body and stuff. If ever all the TED talkers and all the corporate speakers are one way, but you see Beyonce being an absolute queen.
as she is. Yes.
Let's bring some of that energy to
Yeah.
speaking.
Exactly. There's actually a saying that I heard quite a few years back, and I have used it so many times. So I'll share it now. Everything works for someone,
Yeah.
but nothing works for everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Meaning that when it comes to business strategy, like there are so many ways that we could do business. Like everything will work for someone. So that was really permitting for me to experiment and explore with different strategies that may not be the most mainstream way that you would see. But then understanding that just because something works for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for me.
Yeah.
So I took that on as permission to play outside of the lines, reminding myself that, hey, like if you can set yourself up in the corner of a market where no one else has touched before, and you have this unique selling points that no one else does, then that is a business advantage.
And you become a leader.
Yes, you become a leader, you attract a whole market that is needing your exact service or product. But as you mentioned before, Lindsay, how do we know that it's still a viable business strategy? Like if no one's doing it, then how do we know? Well, firstly, sometimes you just got to try and find out.
Yeah.
You got to try it and then you see, because everything's a hypothesis until you try it. Or, as I mentioned before, you seek out those outliers who probably exist out there already, who are very
Yeah.
close to what you want to start doing. Because this world has 8 billion people. We've been around for a long time. Like everything has kind of been done before. You know, there's very little that is completely original in 2025.
Yeah.
So go and seek those examples to give yourself permission to be your unique mold of you.
From the masterclass I was watching with Margaret Atwood last night, she said, stories are patterns interrupted. So if everyone is doing it the same way, then what something new is there? Like what reason is there for you to go and talk to people? Because someone's already talked about it and done it in the same way that
Mm.
you're copying through a fear, through avoiding your authenticity.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great line. Stories are pattern interrupters. Like
Yeah.
that is great. And that reminds me of something that I really focus on when I'm working with different professionals and business owners in their communication is I'm not trying to turn you into someone who you are not. So I'm not trying to tell you to sound more like me or to sound more like anyone. I want you to stay in your own authenticity and I want you to sound like you, but more amplified, but
Yeah.
more clear, more articulate, more engaging, whatever it might be. I want you to amplify your unique voice because, as you were saying, that is the pattern interrupter that will turn heads, whether it's online, you know, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. That is what will make people turn their head and follow you.
And so and it's all trial and error, hey. Like as you were saying, you practiced for a long time in front of the mirror. When was the point in public speaking that you gained some traction? When you know, I'm sure there were public speaking engagements that you had that didn't move the needle much. And then there's an inflection point of, okay, I've done something right. Or I've had an epiphany, or, you know.
And you are right, because I remember my very first ever workshop that I ran. I had run it in a way where people could sign up, but they didn't need to pay until they paid at the door, which is not a good business strategy, as I've since learned. Because what happened was when that day came round, it was bleak. Like it had been raining all morning. The
Yes.
streets were flooded. So I remember setting up the workshop at 1:30 p.m. for a 2 p.m. start. And I was setting up, looking outside. I could see that it did not look good out there. The streets were empty. And then at 1:40, I'd finished setting up and I was waiting for the first people to arrive. And then at 1:50, I was still waiting for the first people to arrive. At 2 o'clock, there was still no one that had come.
Oh,
And, why would they? It was raining, it was cold, no one had paid because it was pay at the door.
yeah.
And then at 2:05, I had 2 people walk through the door, plus my mum and dad,
Oh,
who
good
were
old
there
mum
to
or dad.
support me. They were carrying trays of food, enough for 60 people, because that's how many people had signed up. And yet there were 2 other people.
Oh, there's nothing worse than excessive food at an event that you've put on.
Tell me about
It's a
it.
real sign.
I was humiliated. I thought to myself, I never want to do this again. Like, this is awful. And that's not the last time that I'd had experiences like that. There was one talk that I did once. This was just after COVID, where I had paused right in the middle of the talk after a big point. There was a moment of silence to let that point land. And in that moment, this talk was being live streamed as well as live to an audience. So in that moment, someone who was on the live stream, who thought they were on mute but weren't, said out loud, "Ugh, what a load of bullshit."
I saw.
And I froze. My stomach sank. My heart stopped beating. The whole audience heard it. Like, I just wanted to sink into the ground and disappear. And at the same time, the organizer of the talk, who was sitting at the back of the room, was like sprinting to the front of the room to try and desperately mute this thing. So I've had my moments, and there have been many of those times over the years as I've tried to build my career and build my brand. For me, what started to get traction and what started to get momentum as a personal brand, as a speaker, was when I started to get very clear on my message.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not just knowing my talk topics, not just knowing my content, but being really dialed in how I introduce myself, in how I talk about what my unique selling point is, and how I position myself, so that when I am at networking events, when I am doing meet and greet at the end of a talk, I can be so clear and captivating in the way that I interact. And now it's gotten to the point where I was looking at the stats just the other day. 100% of all of my work, all of my business in the last 2 months, 100% have come from either networking events or talks that I have spoken at. Meaning that it's my message that sells. It's my
Yeah.
in-person meetings with other people that sell. And yes, like, social media is fantastic. It's what's gotten me to where I am now. But I'm seeing a shift in that. Because I'll give you an example. I was at a conference last year, and there was one point where I was running for the elevator because the doors were closing. So the man inside kindly held open the doors. I walked inside and we got chatting. And of course, what's the first thing that he asks? What's your name and what do you do? Like, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the first question we all get asked, and yet we don't know how to answer that question.
So you got a real life elevator pitch.
Yes, I make that
Request.
joke. It was an elevator pitch, literally. So I knew that I had 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds maximum to introduce myself to this man. So I told him, hey, I am a speaking coach. And at the time, I was focusing on working with women because historically women have had that disadvantage of not having a voice. So that was the essence of what I told him. And as I was talking, I watched his eyes widen. And he said to me, Trang, I am the founder and CEO of a national-wide education company where most of my teaching staff are women. And I've noticed the exact discrepancy that you are talking about. Hey, let's exchange contact details. I'd love you to run some workshops for us. And then over the coming months, I got flown out multiple times interstate to run workshops. All because of my ability to answer these commonly asked questions in a concise and engaging way. I had 30 seconds and I was able to captivate him in those 30 seconds. So that has been one big thing for me. It's, of course, all the hard work, it's all of the experience,
Yeah.
but it's really refining how I answer commonly asked questions and my message of how I introduce myself and how I sell myself.
Well, I was going to say that's not by accident that you were able to say that 30-second pitch.
No,
That's
I had
something that was
practiced
a
that spiel.
mirror.
Yeah, like I knew what my spiel was. And that's something that, once again, we get asked that question every time we meet someone new. And yet people struggle because they don't know what to say. So then they just say their job title and they stop there.
Yeah.
But then the conversation ends. Or they don't know where to start and they end up rambling. And then after 2 minutes, they still haven't gotten to the point and they're rambling. They're like just listing off all their achievements and it sounds like a resume.
Yeah.
So something that I am a big proponent of is being really clear on our spiels of how we introduce ourselves and how we sell ourselves.
So I'm going to ask you what your 30-second elevator pitch is.
Well, it depends on the setting. So,
Yeah.
you know, if I meet someone at a business event versus at a wedding, it's going to be a little bit different. I gave an overview of that at the very start today when I talked about my upbringing. I usually also sometimes, depending on how much time I have, right?
Yeah.
Elevator is going to be different to a one-on-one meeting. But I might go into well, being the daughter of immigrant parents who came from war and poverty, they only wanted one thing for me in life, and that was to become a doctor, a lawyer, or a disappointment. Like I make that joke and it gets people laughing, right? So you want to build rapport from the get-go. And then I talk about how I decided to meet them in the middle and I became a physiotherapist. That was my very first profession out of university. But after a few years of practice, I started to question
Wow.
how I could help people, not just as athletes, but as human beings. Like, how can I work with people more comprehensively and change their lives so that when more people are thriving, then humanity will thrive. And when humanity thrives, then the world will thrive. So that's when I started my very first business in coaching. And I've since learned the power of our voice. And that's why I've since gone all in on speaking, coaching, and speaking.
I love that because it really encapsulates all the things that we've been talking about storytelling, facing your fears. Because I'm going to guess it's not easy to talk about your parents like that, to say that they had expectations of me, or they were my perceptions of their expectations of me, because, you know, like how would my parents feel about hearing that, you know? But that's your story. And like, so you're facing a fear of, because no story happens by yourself. So you're going to have to bring in other people from around you to authentically share your story. And that can be scary to say, no, actually this did happen to me, and that was the time, or that was, you know, no one's at fault or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but it's just scary to share your story because you have to acknowledge some things that went on.
You are right. You are right. And my way around that is, one, if I'm going to share an intimate story involving someone else, then I will ask them for that consent first.
Okay.
Like if I want to share their story, especially publicly, right? Like if it's on a podcast, if it's on social media, I'll be like, hey, are you happy for me to share this story? Usually they're actually okay with that. Alternatively, we can easily keep our stories anonymous as well.
Yeah.
We can share the story, but change their name, or, you know, keep it more vague who we're actually referencing.
Yeah.
But it's actually really funny because when you were talking, Lindsay, I was brought back to doing my very first TEDx talk run through to my parents. And it's funny because you said you've watched the TEDx talk. So there were quite a few moments where I referenced them and I talked about how they had these expectations. And at the time, it wasn't necessarily that supportive for me. And that's not how it felt. And it was so funny because I was like sharing this story. I was doing the run through to them. And there was a moment halfway through where they looked kind of surprised and shocked. So I stopped And I started laughing because I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is actually happening right now. I'm doing this talk about my parents to my parents. At the same time, I always preface as well that I am so deeply grateful for my parents. And yeah, like there were
Yeah.
those expectations. But I actually, because I travel a lot, but when I come back to Melbourne, I live with my parents and I am so grateful to have time with them and space with them. And yeah, the whole spiel, like I'm very grateful for them.
Well, there was a beautiful redeeming arc where in your TED talk where your parents said that they were proud of you for where you were in your
Yes.
situation. And then that realization of that maybe part of it wasn't their expectations of you, but your perceived expectations of what you think they need.
Yes, yes. There was a moment, and I shared this. This is what you're talking about, Lindsay, when we were having dinner together, and there was a moment of silence before my dad put down his chopsticks, and he said to me, "Trang, I'm so proud of you. Like what you've done with your business, your travels, like I couldn't do myself. And I'm so proud that you were the first person in our entire ancestral lineage to start a business, to go out on your own and to do things that we sacrificed so much for. Like we
Yeah.
wanted you to have a good life. And it may not be what we expected because we couldn't even imagine or we couldn't even fathom this life that you have created for yourself. So we didn't even know that this was an option.
Yeah.
But you've created this and we can see that you're thriving, you're happy, and we're so proud of you. And that has touched me so much, and that's really opened up our relationship to be closer than ever before. I go for runs with my dad's where like it's 7 a.m. in the morning, the sky is pink because it's sunrise, and we're having philosophical chats as we are running,
Yeah.
6-7 kilometers together. And I think that really ties into communication once again. Like imagine well, not even imagine, think about how much power we have with our voice,
Yeah.
how much we can touch someone, how much we can change someone's world based on the words that we use. So that's what I love so much about this whole topic.
It's so beautiful. What a great way to round this out, to end on pride on the other side. So you have your story of your perceived fears, things that have happened to you that make you become who you are, your authentic self. And then you have possibly an obligation to share that with others. And then pride comes on the other side. I think that's gorgeous.
Yes, yes. There are so many sides of this. And this is why I love what I do so much because we can use our voice to lead powerful movements. Our voice can change this world. We can use our voice to help someone make their life better. We can use our voice to deepen the most special relationships in our life. There is so much to this. So, Lindsay, thank you for having this conversation with me because I love the directions that this conversation went, and I didn't expect it to go in some of those directions. But I'm very hopeful that this will resonate and this will be helpful for the audience.
Beautiful. And if people want to reach out and find out more about what you do and follow you and learn more about public speaking, what can they do?
For sure. The best place to find me will be on my website, so trangnova.com. Or if you want to go onto socials, I'm on LinkedIn, Trang Nova, or Instagram, Trang_Nova. Easy.
Beautiful.
It's all the same.
And what was the guy that you were talking about, Vin
Jang.
Vin Jang?
We can put the link below to his profile because, yeah, I am a huge fan and I'd highly recommend everyone to check him out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I really enjoyed that. And I'm going to go home and look in the mirror and see what Sasha Fierce I can bring out of myself.
Yes, let's do it. Thank you, Lindsay. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.